She's getting better. She's never had this many people before. She's doing a great job. Oh, she's got to make it. Yeah. At 7 o'clock, call this meeting of the Pinconning Area School Board to order. Please join me with the allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Nadefer,
Present.
Kuchar,
Present.
Doobie, present. Holstein,
Present.
Yaris,
Here.
Ravish, present, and Anderson excused.
Thank you. I normally kind of glance over the president's comment and talk about the weather. Not say anything at all. Tonight I think it calls for something different. Still trying to keep it brief. Our staff, students, and community experienced something traumatic 2 weeks ago as a gun was brought into the school. Our emotions are raw and may never be the same again, but we are doing all we can to evaluate and learn from this situation. On behalf of the board, I want to thank the staff and students for how they reacted that day, because they kept this traumatic event from becoming a tragic event. So, thank you. With that, I'll take any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda. So moved. Support. Okay, motion. The agenda. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Community comments on the agenda. For those of you who would like to speak, we only have 4 minutes. There are a lot of people here. I'm not sure who all wants to speak. I'll try to keep that in mind. We do have a second part where you can also speak to the board. But keep it to 4 minutes. I'll have a timer up here. We'll need your name and address. And again, you're addressing the board, and we'll just hear what you have to say. It's not a question and answer session. You can fill out a form back there to do that, or email us or the superintendent, and we can respond in writing. But this is us to hear your perspective, but not necessarily kind of a debate or between, or to get you answers to your specific questions. Okay. So with that, does anybody like to? Ms. Bauer?
Yes.
Yes, your name and address.
Lana Bauer. Do I need to state my address as it's already on the form?
Okay, no, good to go.
Okay. After notification of the weapon at school on Tuesday, January 10th, I sent the board and administration a very strongly worded email. Though I apologize for the lack of emotional control in my letter, I stand behind my statements. Though I can only imagine the fear that was going through the minds of those who handled the situation, and am grateful at the positive outcome, I once again urge you for continued communication and transparency. Ultimately, I have always trusted this board that the best interests of students and staff were taken into consideration always. I've attended numerous meetings, including those where safety and security were discussed. Most recently, that after the Oxford shooting in January of 2022, we had that meeting where parents were assured of policies and procedures that would be followed in the event of a situation like this. After speaking to other parents regarding this weapon situation, a loaded gun, these are the questions, concerns, and suggestions I present to you. Even though 911 was down that day, were police notified directly prior to the superintendent being called? If forgotten, was this gun being carried around all day on Monday the 9th as well? Where was our resource officer? Isn't it true that all other classrooms could have been put into a shelter in place with no movement without notifying the classroom in question? Who made the decision to release all students without a lockdown to ensure that this was in fact an isolated incident? Why was the media issued a statement first and not parents about the gun? What support was given to your teachers, staff, and students? Why weren't classes canceled the next day to give everyone a chance to sort things out and ensure that protocols for support were in place? Without a shelter in place with no movement, this situation could have had a significantly different outcome. By not notifying parents of the fact that a gun and bullets were in our building, you intentionally denied us our parental rights. You denied us the ability to decide for ourselves if our children could emotionally and mentally be prepared to attend school the following day. You had denied us the ability to have those conversations with our children first. Instead, a general statement was made to students at the end of first hour the next day, and your teachers and staff were left to answer questions. Frankly, teachers and staff are not trained, nor should they be responsible for that. They are our children. Those conversations should have happened with us first. By not instituting a lockdown or canceling classes to allow for investigating students' statements, children were left to discuss the matter over social media with one another and without facts. Students were then reprimanded by being sent to the behavior room for discussing it in school, and what they saw and heard deemed unreliable to the media as rumor mill. This could have all been avoided if parents could have had accurate information to have conversations with their children first. Instead, most parents found out about the gun via the 12 o'clock news on Wednesday the 11th, after their children were already in class and had found out by student-to-student interaction. Parents were left questioning why the media deserved to know it was a gun before we were notified. As I've stated previously to this board, we have a mental health crisis on our hands. I'd be curious to know if you know how many of your students are or have been in mental health counseling. I commend our superintendent for the ongoing work he is doing to provide parents with resources on the matter. However, this situation felt downplayed. The implied message felt like someone forgot a pocket knife in their bag, which is quite different than carrying a loaded gun on them. Parents feel deceived, being denied accurate information. I feel like you failed your parents, teachers, students, staff, and no one was given time to process the situation, deal with their own emotions effectively, and or have conversations with their own children before being dropped back into classrooms. Classrooms with children who had questions,
Later this time.
teachers and staff were ill prepared to handle.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi.
State your name and address, please.
Yep, my name is Rob Rosecrans. I live here in the community. Right down the road, as a matter of fact, two of my children still attend here. Nathaniel and Alexander, and Nathan graduated a couple years ago. I work at the Bay County Juvenile Home, and I've been working with kids for 33 years. 33 years now. In secure detention in a residential. I've also, for the last 12 years, I'm the Safe Crisis Management instructor for our facility. Safe Crisis Management is basically what you guys did the day of your incident, okay? And I can tell you, for doing it for 12 years, what that does is that I teach our staff members ways to de-escalate situations within our environment. And I think that's what you attempted and tried to do that day, a very difficult day for you. Having said that, I personally think that you guys did a stand-up job, whoever handled it that day, Mr. Kuchar and Mr. Kowalczyk, in looking at things and reviewing it. I think you did a good job. Is there areas where you could have had improvement? Absolutely. Every day we go through that, and as a school board and as teachers, administrators, every day you go through that. You can always improve, and that's why the families are here, so you can point out those blind spots for these people so that they can improve on it. Okay. So a very difficult situation, all in all. Let's have a few notes here. Going forward. Having done this for 33 years, I can tell you folks right now in the school board that the kids that I work with, they're in crisis, okay? And we have a lot of students and a lot of children in our community, period, and throughout the state who are in crisis and have issues and problems. And we can't lose that idea. That COVID has created a lot of mental health issues. We all know that. There is not enough, with all due respect to the lady who spoke over here, there's just not enough human or mental health resources available in the state right now, and there needs to be more. Our kids are in crisis. I can tell you, first and foremost, the children that I work with, they're in crisis. Their parents are in crisis, or their parent is in crisis, and they need help, okay? I'd be willing to offer my services as not only a juvenile detention person, but as a father. I have a different skill set than a lot of other people. I'd be willing to offer my services to come in and talk to kids, because the way I look at it is it's my time. It's my turn. My kids are still here. I see these kids over and over coming through our doors at the juvenile home with serious issues and problems and committing crimes that, you know, you guys read about in the news afterwards. But a pep assembly or something, if you wanted my services, I can leave my name and number because the kids don't understand. They do not understand the issues or the problems that they can get in trouble by doing something that happened to our school. They don't understand it. And they need to be aware. 1 minute left? Okay. And I'd be willing to do that, to speak to your children about that. It's also our responsibilities as parents. I'm going to say this first and foremost and come out and say it. I think personally, we're more concerned about the books that are in schools and to remove those than we are about talking to our children one-on-one. I see it every single day at the juvenile. We should be concerned about what's on their phones, where they're at on the internet. While they're at home, it's our job to parent and take care of these children. We're their parents, okay? I don't want to sound disrespectful at all. I hope I'm not coming across that way, but it's my turn to try and help. I want to help as much as I can. I live in this community. My kids go here. So any kind of help that I can give, I'm willing to do it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the board? Yes, sir, again. Name.
Ryan Overly, 4011 Swinson Newman Road. Biggest problem I had with the whole deal, I wasn't as mad at the fact that a kid brought a gun to the school as it was to find out the next day, seeing the news crew on the sidewalk filming the school while driving by with my sister, and by the time I made it home, my sister found it online before I even knew it had happened. You guys got a system in place that allows you to call us at 6 a.m. in the morning to tell us our kids aren't going to school for a snow day, or basketball was canceled tonight because of inclement weather. You don't think you could have done something that would have got a hold of a lot more people than the simple messages that go through the cracks? That's my biggest concern. I commend this dude for volunteering his services. I too am a volunteer, 15 years. Okay, it's a huge part. We see it every day too. The kids need help. Mental health is a huge thing. I can't agree more than with her. There's so much that could have been done slightly different, handled just a little bit different, and made things a lot smoother by simply notifying people appropriately. That's my biggest thing. If it was to ever happen again, I'd want to know prior to my kids getting home so I know if I need to talk to them or something. Not the next day saying, hey, what happened yesterday at school? You know, that just blows me away. We tell the kids to be open and communicate when stuff happens. That's what we're teaching the kids. You guys are helping teach the kids. You guys should lead by example too. That's all I got.
Anybody else like to address the board?
My name's Irene LaRouche. I graduated from this school in 1973. My daughter was valedictorian in 2017. I feel that a 13-year-old, I'm an RN and I'm retired. I feel a 13-year-old really doesn't know what's going on in life. I'm still learning and I'm 68. My question to the board is, this? Are you guys going to show by example? I know it's not a question and answer. My question to the board is, I think you should show by example by expulsion of this child. Go hardcore, because if you do not do that, you're going to have copycats. And that's all I have to say. All right? I mean, I'm not mad at you guys. You saved lives that day. I commend you for doing that. I think you're wonderful people. But I think you need to put the pedal to the metal on the parents and the child.
Anybody else like to address? Anyone else? Thank you, move on. Student support leaders.
Thank you, Mr. Kuchar. All right, so a little bit of a happier note now. So we are going to talk about student Spartans. So we do this every month where we nominate a middle school and high school student. We've done exceptionally well throughout the previous month, and teachers nominate them at each level. So for your middle school student of the month, it is Isabella Dope. She was nominated by Miss Amy Sinek. Here are some comments that Ms. Sinek made about Isabella. Izzy is a great student, always prepared, involved in class discussions, and a great leader for the other students. We very much enjoy having her in class. So your middle school student of the month, Miss Isabella Dope. Next is our high school student of the month. That is Miss Kaya Billingsley. Kaya was nominated by Mr. Pomzo. Some notes that Mr. Pomzo made about Kaya. Kaya is always doing extra credit despite having over 100% in the class. She volunteers. Kaya is also in numerous extracurricular activities such as the dance team, NHS, student council, and despite that being spread so thin, she always manages to have her work in on time and well done. She is polite and good natured. Your high school student of the month is Kaya Billingsley.
Thank you. Consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the consent agenda and pay the bill totaling $535,187.62.
Support. The motion support, any discussion on this? All right, need a roll call vote, please.
Bedifer,
Yes.
Yaris,
Yes.
Dubé,
Yes.
Holstein,
Yes.
Rabish, yes. Kuchar,
Yes,
6-0.
thank you, motion carries. This is communication, Mr. Polchek.
Thank you, President Kuchar. I'd like to start with giving a little bit of information about the superintendent's conference last week. I had a great experience at MASA's conference. A few of the sessions that I was at that I brought some information back were on new teacher recruitment, which we know that's going to be a hot topic for us in the near future, school safety, LGBTQ status in students' situations in school, students overcoming the odds to be successful, government and legislative updates with budgets and new legislation that's out there. There's a new Future of Learning Council, a group of superintendents that's collaborating and bringing stuff to their districts, and meeting with superintendents from our ISD and the athletic conferences is also very invaluable to be able to talk about things and share experiences. So it was a great conference.
Did they give you a funding level for next year? Estimate of what it's going to remain level?
What was that?
Student funding for next
No, didn't say that yet. They just talked a little bit, about what we did get this year, and no talk yet about what's in the future. The gun incident summary, I'd like to summarize the situation involving our former student and the gun in our building and the discussion of what's been happening since then. This information, for the most part, has already been shared with the community, and I'd also like to address a few of the concerns that have been talked about or asked about. But before I do that, I would like to make sure everyone understands that there is FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, and this protects the student's privacy for educational records. So there's a lot of stuff that cannot be said and brought out at this time. So just a quick recap. Like I said, a lot of this you've already heard. January 10th, administration notified of a possible weapon in the school. That student was taken out of class and brought to the office where he turned over the handgun. State police started their investigation. Staff were called into a meeting where they talked. We told them about the situation, and we talked about why no lockdown versus lockdown in this situation. Our lawyer was called to help produce the initial statement that was sent home to parents that afternoon, I guess you could say, within a couple hours of the incident happening. And that was to everyone within the district, not just our school. The internal investigation continued with our administration, and the statements have been added to our report. And one more thing, that when disciplining students, parents' careers do not matter. And that's one thing that we've been hearing a lot of, that the student in question's parent career has something to do with the decision or may make an impact. I don't even know what the students' parents' careers are. So just to let everyone know that that has nothing to do with our investigation or the outcome of whatever happens. So really the big portion of my section that I'd like to talk about is what we do now. How do we prevent this from happening again at our school? Couple things that we have planned already: meeting with State Trooper Birch and Kustra, and also our school resource officer, and they are experts at this. This is their specialty, and they will meet with us to talk about what happened, but more about what can happen in the future, what we can do to prevent this, what are our best ways moving forward. We invited all staff to attend a debriefing meeting that week that this happened. We had some half days in there, so they were able to come into this room, and that was the district-wide also. And it was a nice meeting where our resource officer was there, school board president was there. We had some ISD staff that were there that could also help with some questions. And we talked about everything. We talked about our communication, our student services. We talked about plans for future safety. So it was a nice start to looking back on this. And like we said from the start, we are going to learn. This wasn't handled perfectly by any means. We are happy the way it turned out, but we know that there are some things that we're going to discuss and talk about for future events. Hopefully not to this extent, but just so that parents are getting what they need. Big talk about metal detectors. We've had many emails that came into us, talked to a lot of parents about metal detectors. I talked a lot about metal detectors at my conference last week. And this is kind of what I found out about that they would make us feel safer as a district. Seeing those, we probably would feel safer seeing those, but there are concerns. Staffing, for one, would be an issue. Time for students entering the building is very big. And we actually have a district in our conference that has metal detectors that does not use them. They said the students are lined up around the building, which causes concern for a big group of students waiting outside the building in kind of a uncontrolled environment. So they use them when there's a threat or if there's a need to use them, but most days they are not used. In 2017, there was a report from the San Francisco-based West End Justice and Prevention Center. It's a nonprofit that looks into things like this. And they looked back, and in 2017, I think we would agree that the most use of metal detectors are probably in airports. And they reported a 95% fail rate with metal detectors in some airports. And in general, in whole, the TSA had an 80% fail rate with metal detectors. So it doesn't seem like they protect us as much as they would seem visually. So then that's what the next statement was, that they do seem to provide us with a visible response to concerns, but there is not a lot of support to their effectiveness at preventing school shootings or successfully detaining weapons at schools. All this information doesn't mean we'll never talk about them, and we will not ever say, we won't ever say that we will never have them, but I'm just giving out these facts that I found because I've looked a lot into them. This is obviously something that we're not going to just push aside and say, we will never have them because of this. Let's see. Here's our main focus is going to be on educating our students. We have meetings set up this week with every class. We talked about having an assembly, but now you have hundreds of students where some are looking in different spots. It's not as intimate where if we have them in this room, we can fit all of our students in here. It's much more of a small group where they will be able to hear us, see us, ask questions. They're not going to be afraid to ask a question in here with 80 students compared to 300 or 400 in the gym. So we want them to be able to answer questions or ask questions. We also want them to hear from us. What do you do if you're in this situation? What if you are the student who has a best friend and you know something, maybe they have something. How do I get this to administrators, to a teacher, to someone? How do we get that information quicker? And maybe it's not me walking into the office where everybody sees me, it can be an email. We now have OK to Say posters in every classroom, which is a way that students can text concerns and it goes to police, which then it comes right to us. Those posters were up in the hallways before this, but now they are in the classrooms and we're going to make all students aware that this is an option for you. So we want them to know the options that they have. How can they help in this situation? And we also want them to know, what do you do if you find yourself in this situation where you brought something to school that you shouldn't have here? What do you do? And obviously telling a staff, going to the office, best case scenario, and students would be handled differently than hiding something throughout the day or trying to get away with something, I guess you could say. So that's something that we're going to do. We also would have some other meetings. A committee meeting is possible with our board. That's something that they can discuss or request. I think it may be helpful once we have our meeting with the state police and school resource officer with our students. If we have more information to then have that and see, is there a policy that needs to be changed? There is no policy that talks about the exact situation that we found ourselves in. And I don't think we can have a policy for every situation that is out there. That's not possible, but we can have a policy that gets us ready. And I think the training that we've had for similar type things did help us on this day and to make sure things turned out in a safe way. So we have had a lot of positive support on the handling of this. I've had local security directors from districts talk to us and say that it was handled the way it should. Now they're talking about the situation, not the after communication and things like that. That's stuff that, like we said, we're going to take into consideration and try to improve on. But their main thing when they talk to me is that we limited damages. Okay, so that's our number one. So even though the end result was what we would hope for, we know we can learn from our experiences and improve in the process. So one other thing, we did have a student check-in last week. All students received an email that we used to do during COVID that had their kind of a mental health check-in. I think there were 4 or 5 questions. It asked them if they needed to talk to someone and even listed people that they could talk to, and they were able to choose who they would like to talk to, which was really nice. I really want to thank Ms. Lazaro for throwing that together quickly, and it was done very well. So we appreciate that. Any questions, board members? Thank you.
We will do the student reps.
So in student council, we are busy preparing for Coming Home 2023. Coming Home will be the week of February 20th through the 24th. This year's dance will take place in the middle school gym from 7 to 10 p.m. on Saturday, February 25th, 2023. Also, the members of Student Council will be sponsoring their late winter blood drive on Tuesday, March 7th from 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. in the high school library. Appointment reservations have already begun, and the blood drive will be open to all members of the community. Second semester just started, and after a week of furious schedule changes, class schedules have now been finalized, and students and staff are busy getting used to new classes, new classmates, and new opportunities. A huge thank you to Ms. Powell and Ms. Moran, who have worked tirelessly to ensure that students received the classes that they wanted and needed for semester 2. Bowling. The boys bowling team defeated Beaverton 19-11 on Saturday. The team has rattled off 4 straight victories and are currently alone in second place in the Jack Pine Conference. High games went to Logan Milliman 221 and 180, Jacob Stoneback 153, and Ethan Miller 145. The girls bowling team lost to a tough Beaverton team. High games went to Layla St. Peter 157 and 158, Madison Grigorchek 133, and Lexi Joust 127. The spring musical. Auditions for the spring musical Breeze were conducted last week. Students are eagerly looking forward to practices beginning and the opportunity to put on another amazing dramatic performance for the Pinconning community. The Band Booster Trivia Night will be sponsored on Saturday, March 4th, beginning at 7 p.m. in the middle school gym. Cost is $20 per player with teams of up to 6 players. Money raised will go to support the band program here at the school. Esports. The esports team has begun practice for the spring season. 2 Rocket League teams and 1 Mario Kart team will compete this spring. 8 new television screens purchased with grant money have been installed and other needed equipment is on the way. SAE. Members of SAE are currently planning for the trip to New Orleans this June. Students also voted on the international trip for 2024 and have chosen the trip to Ireland, England, and Wales for the summer of 2024. A formal request will be sent to the school board in the near future for formal approval of this destination. Wrestling. The wrestling team competed at the Bay City Central Invitational this past weekend. The Spartans crowned 4 individual champions, including Landon Enciso, Maverick Legard, Tyler Brooks, and Darius Cooper. Runner-up finishes were secured by Jesse Mans, Kennedy Coutier, Braden Hernandez, and Cooper Norman.
Review was planning. Administrative staff, budget amendments.
So tonight we have to do our budget amendment. In January-ish, every year we do an amendment for the things that we know. We originally adopt in June, and then we do another amendment in June to settle up for the end of the year and prepare for the following year. So historically, when creating our original budget, the state had not adopted their budget, so we were not aware of what money they were going to provide for us, although we had some idea. The foundation allowance, because the state had not adopted, was unknown, and so we projected at $400 of an increase per student. Of course, with enrollment predictions, the middle cities have continued to predict a steady loss of students, so we projected at 40 students. Things that we couldn't predict is the federal and state grants to support the education. With COVID especially, it just seems to come as it comes and we're reacting to it. And we also didn't know any added student needs that we may have. So looking at our revenues specifically, we had an adjustment from local to state, so you'll see a reduction in our state, but it was actually just moved, or from local, it was moved to our state. We also have a reduction in the CHIP grant. This is not because we received less from the 2% Chippewa Indian tribe. It's actually because it was received to go specifically to other funds. For example, we received a large donation for the soccer field,
and that goes into a capital projects fund. It is not affected in this budget. On our student count, when we did our October student count day, we actually only lost 13 students, so we needed to adjust our budget to include the revenues for those other students. On our foundation, when the state settled their budget, they actually settled at $450, so we had a $50 increase over what we projected, bringing our foundation allowance to $91.50 per student. In regards to the federal grants that we have received or received notification of since then, ESSER 2, we have fully budgeted in this budget. We also received a Michigan State Police Safety Grant that was used to replace the entrance doors at Linwood Elementary. The title allocations came in higher than expected, and we also received our carryover for funds that we were unable to use last year. We received the emergency connectivity fund. If anybody remembers hearing about the Chromebooks that we got right at the beginning of the school year, and students came in to help unbox them and get them ready. That was a very large donation that needs to be recorded in our federal funds. And then we have a health resource officer that we received an increase in that grant and has to carry over. So when we carry, we also have our GSRP foundation that was fully funded again this year at the foundation allowance of $91.50. In the past, that hasn't been a thing. We've received a lower amount for preschool students. And the ISD also increased their special ed flow through. They are required to keep their special ed fund balance at a certain amount. When that hits that amount, then they release those funds back to the local districts to help support special ed. In our expenditures, how those revenues carry over is we have to add the cost of the Chromebooks for that ECF grant. We have to increase our allocations to the health resources that the district has. We chose to do that in staffing and in supplies this year. And our title increase will go mainly to staffing. The retirement UAAL, we are a Michigan State of Retirement, and they tell us how much we have to pay every year. And so on that unfunded liability, there was an increase that has to be budgeted. We also added an electives teacher at the middle school, high school at the beginning of the school year that hadn't been accounted for. We have a student who requires a nurse due to their, yes, it's actually, they're not special ed, they're special needs. So we have a nurse assigned to a student, and then we have some special ed parapros. We have general adjustments to staff, leaves, retirements, new hires, those type of things need to be accounted for, and then we adjusted all of our lines trending. The cost of things are going up, we need to make sure we've accounted for that for things like gas and food and whatever we may have there. Capital outlay specifically, the Linwood door replacement falls in our capital outlay line. And on the ESSER 2, we are using it to replace the PA system at Central. And we are preparing for a playground that will be sent to site committee and will come before the board for approval before it is official. But we are anticipating it, so it is being budgeted. We also replaced the PA system at the GSRP preschool, and the state did approve out of the GSRP grant for a playground structure at Linwood for the preschool students. So overall, as far as the summary of our budget, the first thing that we have to do during this amendment is adjust our beginning fund balance for what was provided in the audit. So what you're seeing under the original adoption is what we were anticipating it to be. Then when our audit was complete, there's an adjustment, so we have adjusted for that. Also on tonight's agenda, you will see an adjustment to the PA 109 fund balance requirement. So to stay off the state's you've been bad list, we need to keep a 5% fund balance. And that is adjusted every year, also based on last year's audit. It's 5% of last year's audited revenues. So we'll be asking the board to approve that adjustment. Some of the things that we need to remember and continue to remember, federal COVID grants, all this influx of money that we've received over the last couple of years is one-time money. If you do long-term expenditures such as staff, you need a plan in place to be able to account for that when the funding is gone. The student learning loss is going to continue for many years. The kids were all affected by COVID from the shutdowns, and we're gonna have to address that for many years to come, even after those funds are gone. So one of the things that our board has chosen to do is create a designation for COVID learning loss. So today we have COVID funds and grant money coming in. 2 years from now, we will not. But we are creating things that are going to need to be paid for in the future. So we've created a designation to help ensure that we'll be able to continue those initiatives moving forward. And based on what we are seeing, we are probably going to need to increase that designation while we have the one-time funds on hand. So said and done, our current projected undesignated general fund balance is approximately $2 million. There's some things that we predict we will have to amend in the June budget. We are waiting to find out about the student mental health grant. We anticipate that we'll get it, but the state is dragging their feet, so we don't. We have requested an improved student safety grant to be able to help us on some of the spots that we see need. We have a comprehensive safety assessment grant. That is to have somebody come in and do an assessment and help tell us where we have weaknesses and what we need to do. We've requested for the critical incident mapping, which is really more, I believe, for the responders to understand where they're coming if something happens, where they need to be on our location, which part of the map are they responding to, where's the incident at. We also have requested a learning loss grant that is expected, if we receive it, to go towards tutoring and possibly summer school. Curriculum Director Braun presented that back in October to you. And the state also has notified us that we will be getting a MIPSERS, which is the state retirement system one-time deposit to help offset unfunded liabilities. But they seem to be fighting currently as to how we need to book it, so they're not releasing those funds to us yet. That will be an in and out, whatever they give us, they're going to take right back. But they're trying to decide how we need to record that in there. As of right now, are there any questions from the board? Thank you.
Other administrators? Any other administrators? Formal committee going on? Everything great? Oh, Dr. Gold,
Hi,
please.
Bill. Good evening. We had our MyKIP team meeting last week, which is our continuous improvement plan for the district, and we are in a great spot right now. This is the third year we've been doing it, and we're finally seeing the wheels really take off. Another thing I learned on a positive note is our high school is a reward school this year because our grades are so good. And our testing scores are high, and out of the BA, our Bay Area ISD, we are the only reward school for our grades, so that's a good win for us.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick recap. But as Kylie said, we had final exams last week. Went very well. We do have our okay to say. I call it okay to say, but we're having a conference with all the grade levels, and Mr. Falchuk alluded to it earlier, just to kind of have an honest conversation about everything and about the event. So as you talk to your children tonight, prep them, have them come in on Wednesday when we come in, to have an honest conversation with us. You know, when you get teenagers in one room and they're all together, it can kind of go off track pretty quick. Just if you could prep them for that conversation, that would be very helpful to us, so we can really gather something from that. Student Advisory Committee is still being developed. Again, that's a committee that I'm putting together for the student body that basically gives them a voice to make changes in their school. So I take, take a lot of their input, have them lead the agenda and the discussion items, and then I take those things, I take them to the superintendent or the school board to possibly make change. So that's in development right now. Still got a couple of kids I'm trying to get on board, but it's going really well. This parent advisory committees is something that I did last year that I'm bringing back this year, and we had over 16 parents volunteer to do that. That's once a month, so we're excited about that. And the same kind of thing, again, parents give parents a voice in what's going on in their school, and we can, again, if we all think that it's a really good idea, we can go to the school board or go to the superintendent and present those ideas and changes to them later on. So excited about that, excited to see where that goes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Administrators? Nobody's attention. Board committee reports.
Budget committee met with Chris, went over the budget amendment detail that she presented today. And we are comfortable recommending that we adopt the amendment budget that she presented. And then we also spent time discussing how we're going to fund the Central Elementary playground. It's needed badly. We have a plan in place to be able to fund that project, so we recommend moving it on to site committee. Which segment?
I saw the capital outlay was increased by 200,000, so.
Right.
Guess
It's a pretty extensive
Yeah.
project. It's a total revamp of what we have there now.
Yeah.
Actually, it's scaled back some from what you saw. But it's, the asphalt needs to be addressed at some point as well. That's not included. So,
Okay. Definitely move forward with that. Any questions for the budget committee? Thank you. Any other committees? Okay, on to the non-consent agenda.
Make a motion to reaffirm the fund balance designation resolution as presented, establishing a 5% fund balance in accordance with PA 109.
Support. Motion support, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Yaris.
Yes.
Bedifer,
Yes.
Doobie,
Yes.
Holstein,
Yes.
Ravish, yes, Kuchar,
Yes.
6-0.
Thank you, motion carries. And B.
I move to approve the 22-23 budget amendment as presented and recommended by the budget.
Support. Motion support, any discussion? Seeing none again, I'm gonna call.
Yaris,
Thank Chris, she did a fine job. There's a lot of
Yeah, she
she covered that day. And it was well presented. Thank you. And just like you did here today. Very, very well.
Roll call.
Yaris,
Yes.
Bedifer,
Yes.
Doobie,
Yes.
Holstein,
Yes.
Ravish, yes, Kuchar,
Yes.
6-0.
Motion carries, good, thank you. And item C, board committees. Questions on that at all? Mixed up a little bit.
I make a motion for the board.
Thank you. You're a second to that.
I'll support that.
How you made you the chair, the one you wanted? We have motion and support, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, thank you. Once again, public comment, anybody like to address the board? Again, 4 minutes, please state your name and address.
Preston, my address is on the form.
Okay, thank you.
I find it funny that 2 days after the incident with the gun, that my daughter is approached and told, "You're not allowed to carry a purse anymore in class. You're taking away her rights to carry her feminine products with her.
never knowing when or where she is going to be in this school at the time that her period starts or that she needs to take care of her issue. I feel you guys need to reevaluate this rule in your guys' handbook. Because if this is something that's going to be going on, I did approach Kyle about it, and he's like, oh, well, we'll put baskets in the bathrooms with product for the girls. I am sorry. I was a teenage child at one time. That product is not going to stay in those bathrooms. It's going to be all over the halls. They're going to have stuff, places it ain't supposed to be. Let's put it that way. I have major issues with this. I would like it addressed in ASAP because my child right now doesn't care to even come to school if she can't have her product with her. She does not want to have to be the student that has to call home and say, I need a change of clothes because I didn't make it in time. Also, the dress code. I am sorry to say, I will take each and every one of you guys shopping, and if you can find clothing that doesn't have holes in it for my child, I will be more than happy to purchase them. Because there is one lady in this school that pinpoints my kid and is always telling her, you have to put a mask in your pants, or you have to take and put a piece of paper across the hole that's maybe a half a fingertip too high. My child is 5'4" and her wingspan is huge. So if somebody wants to go shopping, let's go. Because I am tired of being told, Mom, I got it again today. She pulled me to the side again. Something has to be done with the dress code. That's all I need.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to address the board at all? Ma'am? Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry,
Well,
I didn't cut you off last time.
No, actually, this is a separate topic, so it's fine. I do want to say thank you for the clarification from Mr. Kowalczyk that we were given. That does help answer a few questions. Again, it might not be what we want to hear, but it sounds like progress is moving in the direction we need to see. I wanted to address the resource officer. I've done some research on it, and I'm not sure if everybody knows, but at one time we had a contract with the county, which then got shifted back to a contract with the city of having the resource officer, which kind of causes some problems because the research that I've done with the city of Pinconning shows that our resource officer, our chief of police is on site 4 hours per week is what his contract is. Our resource officer is a part-time employee at 32 hours per week, and we have another employee that is 16 hours per week. I'm FOIAing that information to make sure it's accurate, but that's what I have so far. So that doesn't mean that we have somebody in the Pinconning Police Department readily available to the school at any given time, like we did with the county. Either way, if it's a county, they're maybe far away, like in this situation when we had to call for support. But according to the city of Pinconning's budget, about $34,000 of their total budget comes from an outside source. Again, I'll FOIA that information, but I can presumably assume that it comes from our contract with them from the school. If you look at that, that's 38 to 40% of their allotted yearly budget for their office, for the police department, which leads me to ask the question of if we are paying approximately, let's even just be general and say 25 to 30% of that budget, why do we not have a resource officer in our buildings 25 to 30% of the time? Okay. The police are available to us regardless if we're contracting with them or not, if there's a situation. If there's a call that comes in about the school, whether we have a paid contract with them or not, they're going to come, okay? So if we're paying for that resource officer, why are they not here, okay? I should say more, because I know he's here. Also, the day of the incident, the resource officer was not scheduled during the day because he was scheduled to be at the basketball game that evening. So again, it would be interesting to see how our contract reads as to when he or she, depending on who they are expected to be here, and what makes those judgments as to during the day or during an evening game or whatnot. If we can't get somebody in here connecting with these kids and having those conversations with them so they trust them, then maybe we need to consider going back to the county where we have access to 5 or 6 officers who aren't part-time, so we actually have more, people accessible to the building. And again, just stating, why wasn't our resource officer on site the next day, going into the classrooms and talking to kids with counseling staff immediately that next day? Again, a lot of these parents did not know the true nature of the situation, did not get to have those conversations. And why wasn't somebody directly in with those classes to have those conversations with them? I'm glad to see that Okay to Say is in the classrooms now, and you guys are working on assemblies, and I think that's great. I just think we need to keep pushing for more resources and get that resource officer here and building those connections in our buildings, especially if we're paying for it.
It's not on China. Anybody else like to address it? Yes, ma'am, yeah.
Sherry Strike, over on Alameda Beach, Pinconning. I guess my biggest concern is you alluded to students leaving the school district. For this year, you had assumed 40, we only lost 13. With this incident, neighboring school systems have received calls wanting to know if they can transfer their students over. Parents I know have pulled their children from even elementary school and are homeschooling their kids now. What are we going to do to build the community's respect and safety, knowing that you guys have our students' safety concerns as your #1 top priority? What are we going to do to bring that back? Because as a parent, it has been severely damaged. When we received the call, again, I assumed pocket knife. Most of my friends assumed pocket knife. And then we were told that it was a gun through the media. That was like a gut punch that totally sucked the air from your lungs. As a parent, you didn't have the opportunity, like Lana said, to speak to your children one-on-one. Younger students were hearing things through the grapevine, like you said, gossip mills were running. You don't think that trickles down to kids on the buses at the Boys and Girls Club. You're wrong. You had elementary students coming home terrified. We did not have that opportunity to discuss that with our children because it was not approached by you. So what are you going to do going forward to build the community's faith in you, that you actually do see parents as a priority, student safety as a priority? That is one of my major concerns. Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the
Jillian Groom, I have my address. What I wanted to say is, yes, the first phone call could have been better, but what I wanted to say is thank you for Mr. Qualchuk going into the classroom, knowing there was a loaded gun, not thinking about his safety, but the safety of our students. So, that was all.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, yeah, Rob Rosecrans, 1201 East Pinconning Road. Just to, once again, I want to throw that out there. I have a plethora of experience working with children for 33 years. Anything that I can do, you can contact me through my wife who works here in the district. Get a hold of me. Anything I can do to try and help these kids who might be in any type of crisis situation, I'm willing and able to help. I would just say further that, listen, folks, we as parents, we have a tremendous responsibility to protect our children and take care of our children and communicate with our children. And I see it over the years through all these communities and cities. We're really struggling to do that. So many parents, lack of resources, single parent homes, it's not good. It doesn't make it right as to what happened, but the issues are there. And if we're going to tackle those issues, we need more resources on a state level, on a federal level, okay? We need to be contacting our state representatives, governor, our lieutenant governor, our senators, okay? Get on the phone with them and let them know that we have crisis, we have situations that are happening and going on. And if we're going to tackle those resources legitimately, we need funds. okay? More resource officers, for example. We need federal funds and things like that. That would really help, okay? Contact your representatives, contact your senators, let them know. That's how we can support the school board up here. Okay? Thank you.
Anything else? Yes.
My name is Adam Harrington. I'm right over here on Center Drive. We've been part of the community for about 5 years now. We moved north from the Flint area. It's been one of the best moves I could have done for my family. We love the community, love the school system. My daughter seems to be thriving since we've been here. The second letter that you guys sent out, I felt if we would have got that first, that would have been a completely different scenario. That first one, I felt like it was brushed on the rug to the point where my daughter, thankfully, was out that day. She came home, and I told her about the email that there was an unidentified weapon found. I was like, sounds like a pocket knife. Half hour later, after texting some friends, Dad, it was a gun. I accused my daughter of being a liar. I said there is no way that school did not go into lockdown and did not present this information to us immediately. I understand not wanting to make a panic, but this is after hours. You weren't going to get a bunch of people up at the school at that point wanting to save their kids. The day was over. So I felt like the missteps, it was handled, I'm sure, appropriately considering the circumstances, but the transparency with parents and the way I felt accusing my daughter of being a liar, just to turn around and see on the news, to see her look at me and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that was a much more serious conversation I needed to have. So I don't doubt that you guys have, you want the best for the children, but the transparency needs to be there so we can address that with them. That's something I'm still kind of kicking myself each day since that happened, that I accused her of being a liar, knowing like there's no way. Which I understand, like preventing panic, things like that, but I just really hope that that is taken into consideration going forward, that we are in the loop, and I understand there's protocols and things, but just something that I felt important to share because I kind of assumed that other parents were in the same boat. I thought, get on a farm, pocket knife, oops, it seemed very nonchalant, but then after, it just felt so deceiving to be told from outside sources, other kids, news, and we just want to get that faith back. Not that we've completely lost it, but there was a good fracture there, and we just hope to get that back.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
My name is Shimano. I'm from Linwood. I guess my concern was just that, again, like everybody else, the second letter should have been first. Also, my children don't go to the middle school yet. They're in the elementary school. And my concern was that our elementary school is literally 20 feet away from the high school and the middle school. And there are older kids that ride the bus as well with the younger kids. My kids ride the bus. They ride the bus in the morning for almost 2 hours, in the afternoon for almost 2 hours. And kids talk. And so now my concern is, what kind of conversations now do I have to have with my elementary age children about these situations, because other kids, older kids, are talking about a loaded gun in school, and now my 5-year-old and my 8-year-old are asking me, what's going on at school and why, when is this happening? And so now I have to prepare myself to have these conversations with my kids. And so I feel like it's not only just at the middle school and high school level, but, what do we have for, our elementary kids as well?
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Erin Palmerville, you have my address. I just wanted you guys to know, I know everyone felt helpless that night. However, I was 4,000 miles away hearing secondhand information. I didn't get the chance to talk to my daughter because she was back in school. I was 3 hours behind her. You talk about helpless. I couldn't reach my daughter until hours later. I have never been so disappointed in this board a day in my life. And I never thought I'd say that about this district. I heard everything secondhand, heard the rumors as I thought there's no way possible this isn't pocket knife. to find out the next day. And I couldn't even talk to my daughter. I waited days to get home because I was on a work conference. It was very disappointing, honestly. And I've worked with you guys for years and always stood behind you guys. This was really disappointing. That's it.
Anybody else? Any other public comment? Thank you. Discussion items? Between the board and anybody? Okay. And I was going to know it's a difficult time. I appreciate the community coming out. Everybody has done your side. That's heard in the worst, how to improve. So your feedback is important to the process. So thanks for coming out and speaking up. The only thing we have left is a closed session, which that's the only business we conduct. We'll go into closed session, and then we will come out and only basically adjourn or give any verdict from that closed session. So again, thanks for coming out and have a good night. With that, it's a motion to close session. Motion is support for closed session.
Yep. I'm Tara. I'm the part of the she's kindergarten. I was the one that brought it up when they said driving. And I'm like, I didn't know that was not in the park. Yeah, okay. We live in school. So we'll
Okay.
I didn't want to bring it up.
Travis, yes. Kuchar, 6-0.
Motion carries.